So there's this big, huge protest going on in France. So the French protests call for freedom amid government vaccine push. Don't you just think that something's up with all of this push and forcing people to get vaccinated? It makes you wonder what's going on, what's really going on. And it's like, wow. I mean, we know there's a virus out there, and there's more than one virus, what I heard. But now they're really, really trying to get people to get vaccinated. And I'm wondering a lot of different things. Wondering, had they heard anything else about these viruses that is worse than what we've been hearing? And is this why there's so much urgency to get people vaccinated? Because these viruses are a lot more deadlier. I'm wondering. Because now there's this real urgency to get people to do this. And some of these places that you saw before who really were really lackadaisical on getting people vaccinated now are really, really on it about pushing the pendulum the people's way, telling them, look, you need to get vaccinated. And so I feel as though that there's some more information that we're not being told. And so this is really imperative. So in Paris, more than 100,000 people marched across France on Saturday to protest against President Emmanuel Macron's plans to force vaccination of health workers and require COVID-19 free certificates to enter places such as restaurants and cinemas. So now, what does this sound like to a lot of people? Like your regular livelihood is being attacked, and that's the way people are seeing it. They're not looking at it from the standpoint of view that there's this urgency to protect the people from this deadly disease. And what is it that they're not telling us about this disease is the question. So Macron this week announced sweeping measures to fight the rapid surge of coronavirus infections, which protesters say infringe on freedoms of choice of those who do not want this vaccination. And so what have we heard? We have heard some stories about some of the shots that they have some side effects, but they may be rare, that some of the side effects happen in adults, some of the side effects happen in children, but it doesn't always happen in everyone. So, but what have we also heard? That the virus is out there, that it has mutated. It was COVID-19, now it is Delta, then we have Delta Plus, and then we have one called Lambda. Then there's some other viruses that could come out of it mutates. And so is it that we're not learning what else is it about this virus that forces them to feel that they have the need to push people to get the shot? So that is the question. So the Interior Ministry said that 137 marches took place across the country, gathering nearly 114,000 people, of which 18,000 were in Paris. And so this was huge. The measures had already prompted smaller demonstrations earlier this week, forcing police to use tear gas to disperse protesters. That's how this big of a protest it was. It was collective. And so everyone is sovereign in his own body. And so in no way does a president of the republic have the right to decide on the individual health, said the protester in Paris who identified herself as Christelle. Okay, so marches also included yellow vest protesters seeking to revive the anti-government movement curbed by coronavirus lockdowns. So now the people are speaking out, they're using their civil liberties, and they're saying no more of this. But that's because hasn't there been a long history of the government either doing things or not doing things that have been not really great with people in general, of that country or of any other country for that matter of fact, it feels as though it's being forced upon people. And so when you have that sentiment, then people are going to resist. And so, what is it? The question again I'm posing, what is it about these viruses that causes them to push so hard for people to get vaccinated? Is there some information that we're not knowing yet? And so, it almost prompts me to wonder if this is not even more deadlier than the first Covid-19 that we saw in 2020. And so, is there something they're leaving out? But now they have so much distrust that's growing in public circles that people are not really feeling that they can trust the government. And that's not just in France alone. So, visiting the Sentry in Anglet in southwestern France, Prime Minister Jean Castex said vaccination, which is not mandatory for the general public for now, is the only way to fight this virus. Sounds like they're trying to say something, but it isn't all coming out. So I hear the reluctance that arises, but I think that we must at all costs convince all of our fellow citizens to be vaccinated. It is the best way to cope with this health crisis, Castex said. Despite the strength of the protest in Isos Spora, Styria poll released on Friday found that 60% of the French people agreed with mandatory vaccination for health workers, as well as the requirement for a health pass in some public places. And so they are enforcing this. So, what have we heard here? Here it says that the cases of the Delta virus is quickly surging. And so now we're starting to see the CDC step in. Now we're starting to hear their messages. And now here in the States of America, we're starting to see more news coverage on this Delta virus and the surge of it and the growing numbers of people who are starting to get into the hospitals once again. But this one, it sounds like it might be a little more contagious than the last. And so that may be what is the urgency of these governments trying to get together and make these rules of trying to get people to get vaccinated as quickly as possible. But it's not working. Not like they planned it. And so fast spreading variants of the virus undermining economy recovery. Bingo. Let me read that again. Fast spreading variants of the virus risk undermining the economy recovery. It's not about the people, it's about the economy. Because if you have a group of sick people that are not able to perform and work at these jobs, which there's so many of them that are hiring, but they're not having people go back. If a lot of people get sick or they're ill, you have to open up unemployment and extend it longer, and people are going to be out of work longer. People are going to be in the ER or they're going to be dead, and you're going to lose workers, not because people don't want to go back to work, it's they're going to be too sick and they're not going to be able to go back to work. And then there's also going to be the growing fear as they see how fast spreading this variant is. That's what it sounds like is coming our way. And so they're not saying it, but that's what this feels like. This one is a lot more worse than the last. So fast spreading, notice that, variants of the virus risk undermining economic recovery if allowed to spiral out of control, forcing some governments to rethink COVID strategies just as citizens start their summer holidays, meaning there may be forced lockdowns and draconian measures to keep people away from one another and away from crowded places and spaces just to try to get this thing under control, because the economy is trying to recover and it's still lagging behind. You still have people who are not going back to work for all of these different reasons from back in since 2020. when people were locked down, even here in the States, and they lost jobs because this virus just like ran through some cities. And right now, this new variant is running through some areas, but some people haven't seen it yet. They don't feel it, and what you don't see and what you don't feel, you don't believe it until it comes your way, right? So it says earlier on Saturday, Castex office said that France would reinforce restrictions on unvaccinated travelers from a series of countries to counter a rebound in COVID-19 infections while opening its doors to those who have received all their shots. So this is going to get ugly, folks. So they're going to actually discriminate on the people who have got their shots and who haven't gotten their shots. They're going to demand in some places that you show proof that you're safe to go in those spaces. So they're going to also demand that certain people, maybe many people, get these vaccinations shots, whether they want to or not. And so this could get ugly. So the Delta variant is here, and we must not hide the truth. It is more contagious than the previous ones. Bingo. That's what I thought. More contagious. That's what the fear is. That more and more people will get sick, more and more people will get infected by what this one is a lot worse than regular COVID-19. This is a mutation of it, which is a lot far more contagious. So we must adapt and face it, Castex told reporters in southwestern France, referring to the variant first identified in India after falling from more than 42,000 per day in mid-April to less than 2,000 per day in late June. The average number of the new infections in France has rebounded to reach nearly 11,000 per day. That's how bad this is. What you don't see, what you don't feel, doesn't mean it isn't there. So some 55.5% of the French had a single dose vaccine. As Saturday, 44.8% were fully inoculated. So you have some people that only had one dose of inoculation, which means if you didn't get the second one, you're not fully vaccinated. So it's also like you got to start over again and get revaccinated so you can get the full vaccination. This is the crowd you see here. What do you think about this? Is this a super spreader event or what? And so this is what the scene is, where you see all these people crowding together because of one reason. We don't want to be locked down and we don't want to be forced to vaccinate. And what we can't see and we don't feel isn't hurting us, it isn't a problem. But just wait. Maybe there's something that hasn't been told to us. And so there's also fear. Fear that maybe, just maybe, that we're not being told the truth by the government. So that's what some of these people are thinking. We don't know, but what we do know is we know that 2020 happened. There was COVID-19. Many people died. Many people died. Many people died. And now we have the Delta Plus, and then we have Lambda. We have some other viruses that could come out of that. And the more people resist getting vaccinated, it seems as though when they crowd together like this, is a super spreader event for sure. And so, forced lockdowns, the economy is trying to recover. What do you think is going to happen with this? It's not looking too good. Thanks for listening.